Okay, but thank you so much for coming on. We are up in five. Hey, everybody, welcome to the Santita Jackson Show here on AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. We've got a lot going on at the Rainbow Push International Conference, and we had a wonderful, wonderful session this morning with Pastor Jamal Bryant talking about Target. An excellent target indeed. That Target protest has been very, very successful. In fact, uh, we left the luncheon and went to protest to demonstrate at a Target store. That having been said, it seems like there's a spirit of resistance in the air, and we need to talk about that. We see the National Guard has been federalized in California, in Los Angeles, really in the downtown area. I think I heard Mayor Karen Bass of Los Angeles say that California, Los Angeles is several hundred miles wide. The deployment is only 6 square miles. But you would think that the whole city's on fire. But really, the spirit is on fire. There is something that is happening in America right now and in the world, but particularly in America. I'm wondering if these immigrant marches are about immigration and maybe something more. Is this a spark that is igniting a brighter flame? Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, WIC, SNAP, cost of eggs. Can you send your children to college? People, if they go to college, can they speak freely? Can you speak freely on your job? I mean, there's just a lot going on here. So I want to know what your thoughts are. You tell me. Hey, everybody, I am Santita Jackson, and I've got my guys coming up. I just called them like literally, like I was in the car. I'm leaving this session. I need you to help me out. But you know what? There's a lot to talk about today. Really, is this live or is it Memorex? Do you remember that commercial? That's right, with Ella Fitzgerald when she shattered glass. And but I think there's something going on. You saw something January 6th several years ago. You didn't have to agree with it, but I mean, Bernie Sanders and Donald Trump are harbingers of something that is going on in America. People, I remember the movie Network, they're mad as hockey, double hockey sticks, and they can't take it anymore. Think about it. They're not having a hard time buying eggs in Canada, but we are having a hard time buying eggs and everything else. Have you looked at your grocery bill lately? What have you had to put back? Think about that. Think about that. And at the same time, some of us are thinking and listening to the discussion about a mass surveillance state. Think about it. They phased out the penny, everybody. The penny, which means they're moving toward a cashless society. I think you need to think about that. What does that mean? It means someone else can turn on your money or turn it off. We need to really think about what's happening here. So I've got Attorney Darrell Jones and Texas State Representative Ron Reynolds. Of course, Attorney Darrell Jones here on WOL in DC every Tuesday, 12 noon Eastern Standard Time. You're also the chair of the Transformative Justice Coalition, a group founded by Attorney Barbara Arnwine, probably our foremost advocate for the vote. And what a team you are, the head of the Texas Black Legislative Caucus, Texas State Representative Ron Reynolds, the state that has the greatest concentration of African Americans in the United States. Hey, we all thought it was Mississippi. Well, at one time it was. Now it's the great old state of Texas. So as we look at these marches, as we are on the cusp of the No Kings movement, many people are anxious about this military march that is going to fall on President Trump's birthday. He said if there's any resistance to that march, that people will be dealt with harshly. What does that say? Think about that, everybody. I think we need to think about this. That's why I'm wondering about the energy behind these marches that are not just in Los Angeles, they're in Chicago, they're in New York, they're spreading everywhere. Something is going on, or maybe not. I think there is something going on. I think that people are increasingly fed up. So let me start with you, Texas State Representative Ron Reynolds, because I got you on the run. But you know what? You're in a very interesting place because uh, Harris County Commissioner Rodney Ellis, brilliant, brilliant politician, really one of the most powerful state and county officials in the country and has been for 3 decades and counting. He said, you know, Texas is a blue state that don't vote. So even the governor and the population of your state legislature and other offices don't really reflect who and where people are. And so when people start marching, you really ought not be shocked, right? So you tell me when you're looking at these marches, because everything is hitting Texas: DEI, immigration, migrants, border patrol, um, affordability. I mean, because you've got great wealth in Texas, you got a solid middle class. It's getting a little shaky for middle class people, but you also have a lot of poverty, grinding poverty. Um, it really is, it's America writ large in the great old state of Texas. When you look at these marches, Texas State Representative Ron Reynolds, what do you see? Is it about immigration only or what?
Well, Santita, thanks for catching me. I am actually live from Washington, D.C. It's good to see my frat brother Daryl on with us. And I can tell you that they're preparing for this facade of a celebration on Saturday, the 14th. I will be participating in the No Kings because there are no kings in the United States. And I want to just quickly, and I'm going to answer your question, but quickly let you know thank you for continuing the resistance and act of defiance by um, the Target. I haven't shopped the Target since they ended their diversity, equity, and inclusion. So I appreciate Pastor Jamal Bryan and Rainbow Push for elevating that because we need to impact them where it hurts, hit them in the pocket book. And I will tell you that I do believe, to answer your question, that this, in the spirit of Fannie Lou Hamer, people are sick and tired of being sick and tired. I think this is more than just immigration. This is a microcosm of so many things that have boiling over. People are frustrated with this target on black and brown and Muslims with this anti-DEI crap. They're tired of the hypocrisy from the Trump administration. They're tired of the attacks on women and Muslims and the LGBTQ community. And so this is a compilation of enough is enough, right? And so this is the energy and the disgust and the angst and the frustration boiled over saying that we're not going to continue to sit on our hands and remain silent. So we're going to see more protests. We're going to see more acts of defiance, and we're going to see more energy. I will say that uh, right now we haven't hit the fever pitch in terms of African Americans participating because many African Americans are still frustrated and feel let down, especially by our Latino brothers and sisters that in large part helped deliver President Trump a victory. And so I know many people who are saying, "Hey, I'm gonna sit this one out. This ain't our
Mhm,
fight." I'm not making judgment. I'm only telling you what I'm hearing. But there
mhm,
is so much frustration right now across the country, and it's not just in California or LA or Chicago. It is in many places, not just in urban areas, but in the suburban areas, in rural areas, because no one has been spared. And so, Santita, I do believe this is only going to get worse.
mhm.
And this is just the beginning of a mass resistance that people are going to have because they don't see any relief in sight and they don't feel that their government is doing enough. So they figure like they have to take into their own hands. And I'll say this finally, quickly. Look at what happened to U.S. Senator Padilla today, Alex Padilla of California. If they handled him like that,
What did they
imagine
do?
what they would do. So he was there at a press conference. from the secretary to ask about these ICE raids, and he could not get his question in. And then they attempted to have him leave. He said, "I won't, what the hell's going on?" They immediately grabbed him, threw him to the ground, and handcuffed him. This is what happened to a United States senator today. And so I want that to resonate with people. I don't want to gloss over the fact that this Trump administration, in fact, we talk about anticipated, uh, no kings rallies taking place. Uh, Governor Abbott, a Trump loyalist, has asked Trump to deploy the National Guard to Texas to keep law and order. And so they're weaponizing law enforcement agencies. And this is all a part of Project 2025. This is authoritarianism right here. This is nothing but the playbook of what they do, what dictators do. That is what President Trump is doing. He's weaponizing the military to silence and scare the American citizens. I don't believe that he's doing it to maintain law and order. I believe he's weaponizing it to inflict fear and pain among the citizens of the United States. These are not he did not act this way to the January 6th insurrectionists. Those were people were fine, right? Those people were patriots. But when you have black and brown people taking it to the streets, even peaceful as it may be, that's a problem. Those are the people that are problems because those people aren't MAGA. And I don't want people to gloss over this or let the next thing happen and then we just act like it didn't exist because we're getting so numb to all of Trump's things, executive orders and shock and awe. This is a dark day in dark times in our country, in our nation's history. And I think that this resistance is more than just immigration. It's about everything that you started off with in your opening statements, eggs, inflation. But it's not just one thing. It's a whole combination, a plethora of things. And I think there's more to come.
Mm. And maybe as we begin to see the slowdown and the cuts, the slowdown in the funding of Social Security and Medicare and Medicaid, as we see those checks cut, SNAP and WIC. I mean, we just saw the campus program. This was an interesting program, woefully underfunded because there are more than 3 million Americans who are in college who are parents with children under 5. This program, which gave you a grant to go to school, has been completely gutted. Essentially, it's been ended. So they're making college the sole space of wealthy people. One of the things that we talked about this on the show, I heard Pastor Bryant say something that we've talked about many times. We're overlooking the trades. We don't even discuss that. We applaud when our children get into these any school and they've got a scholarship to go to college. I'm with W.E.B. Du Bois, but I'm also with Booker T. Cast your buckets where you are. Blossom where you're planted. We need farmers. We need people who can build buildings. You need someone who understands electricity. I tell you what, have your home wired in correctly. You'll understand how important an electrician is. Let the garbage men and women go on strikes. You'll understand how important they are. We've got to expand our sense of what is important and who is important because everybody is. You saw who was important during COVID. I needed to be on the radio, but the people who were the essential workers were on that bus stop at 2 and 3 and 4 in the morning and 5 and 6, whether they had PPEs or not. And most of them did not have them. They just had to go to work. The first person on the police force in New York to die was a cleaning man, black man. He could have been white. He could have been brown. I don't care. He was not a police officer. He was someone who worked in janitorial services. So we've got a lot of thinking to do because you have a lot of people who can't make it from payday to Monday. Daryl, don't get sick. If you have made $1 million ain't what it used to be. I love watching HGTV, the $1 million, I mean, what, lottery dream home, and the homes that they look for two and three and $400,000. I'm like, that's it? You got to pay all that for that? Oh my gosh, this is terrible. And $100,000 doesn't mean anything today. It just doesn't. So, I mean, so what are you seeing and what are you hearing? Because you're also on the radio. So you help me. I mean, Representative Reynolds has his constituents, so he's listening to them. But you're on the radio, and you're also taking a lot of cases where you're seeing people are discriminated against, but I don't know if they can sue for that now. So what do you think?
Yeah, Santita, I think that Representative Reynolds is right on the mark. I mean, what we're seeing and what we're experiencing now across the country is a lot of angst that's built up in people, a lot of frustration that's built up in people. I think that when we're looking at what's happening in Los Angeles, you're not simply seeing a response to the immigration and deportation question, although that's a large part of what has lit the candle. But I think that what you're seeing is the frustration that has been building up and building up and building up in the Americans. It started building up years ago. It's nothing that's recent. It started building up when we started talking about voting rights and people not having their voting rights respected. It started building up, as we moved on and we started the boycott of Target and the anti-DEI. It was building up through all of that, and now it has now come to really a head, if you will, as we're talking about the oligarchy, and now we're talking about the immigration question and deportation and what tactics can be used to remove our neighbors and our friends and our colleagues and our kids and our kids' friends, and you have all of this going on, and they're going into the schools and doing it so that you're creating an environment within the country of tenseness. And I think that what you see happening in LA is the overflowing of that cup of tenseness. And this is the striking back. This is community really starting to now come together to say enough. We're not going to stand for this. We're going to stand together against the oligarch. We're going to stand together against this great entity that's attempting to suppress a part of our community. And it's going to be interesting to see as it develops, because I would certainly suppose that what's going to happen is that you're going to see more communities now coming together than are being divided, that are being turned against each other. You're going to see them now coming together. A large part of what we've seen in the last 5 months or whatever has been driving the wedge of division between communities. And when we talk about an aristocracy, when we talk about dictatorships, when we talk about those types of entities, one of the things that they do, they usually go to the smallest, the weakest group and try to turn everyone against them. And that's precisely what we've seen happen here with the immigration community. Those that are not that are undocumented, they're thinking that most people are going to be against them. They're going to be on the bottom. So let's turn people against them. We can do what we want to do with them, make them the scapegoat, and then we can begin to deal with other people's rights and take away those rights as well. So I think that's a large part of what we're seeing. We also saw it happening with the trans community, because that's what less than 1% of the population. So you saw all of this going against them as well. And my belief is that as they pick off the lower hanging fruit, they then will start to strengthen themselves and go after larger populations. So and Cynthia, it all really stems, I really do believe, by those that are in office. And when we can get our vote on, we can get the people that we want that represent the community in office, we can then begin to address a lot of that. But what we're seeing is a lot of frustration that's building over throughout LA and in different parts of the country.
But what do you think will be the impact of these demonstrators being met with force? And I say it just looking at the protests, which are largely nonviolent. And I have to tell you, the violent actors, I'm always suspicious about who they are, because Black Americans, through our modern civil, through our struggle, have taught America how to wage a peaceful, nonviolent, bloodless coup, if you will. I mean, we had to
Mhm.
overthrow the old order in order to end Jim Crow. And Bayard Rustin said of Dr. King, he said his genius was that he led a revolution in which we barely saw any blood spilled. We had martyrs for sure, but it was not a violent revolution. It was a non-violent revolution. But riots are the language of the unheard. Dr. King also said that. And it just seems that when I'm looking at these people, I see them waving, I see people waving all kinds of flags everywhere, quite frankly. Okay. From all kinds of countries. Now, I don't know why we're so upset about Mexico. Maybe because it's brown. I'm sure that's part of it. But it doesn't make any sense to me for people who want to be American to be holding up the flag for another country. Something about something about that just doesn't add up. Doesn't sink. And so I'm wondering if, and you're a prosecutor, so you've been on that side. So you've interacted, you happen to work with the police and all of that. What happens if, with all of this frustration out here, the pushback becomes violent and somebody might get hurt? I hope to
Yeah,
God that that does not happen, Daryl Jones. But rubber
yeah,
bullets, if you aim it close enough, you can injure someone or worse. Well, I
yeah. Just
mean, it's the velocity, right? The force
exactly.
by which it's being projected that will hurt you.
Right. And just because it's a rubber bullet doesn't mean it won't put an eye out. It absolutely has the force to be able to cause a lot of significant injury. Just because it's a rubber bullet doesn't mean that cannot cause harm if it hits you in the head or some other parts of the body. Don't let the rubber bullet part of the puzzle confuse you. It's dangerous. And I can tell you, Santita, that as a former prosecutor, the question will become when they get into the streets and the violence starts, because what we have is 2,000 or so National Guardsmen that are in LA, 700 U.S. Marines that are in LA. At that point, you're really if you're not if there's not chaos and if there's not violence that's in the street, you're now introducing an element that's going to elevate it to the point that you're looking for that to occur. You're trying to spark that type of reaction from the crowd. What we saw, as Representative Reynolds alluded to earlier, with regards to the U.S. Senator Kadia Alex being assaulted really by the agents and being thrown face down into the ground.
Wait a minute,
That's something that
body slammed. I mean,
body slam,
what is that?
body slammed. And this is a U.S. senator. And this is a U.S. senator. This is not somebody that was a dangerous protester. This is a person that wanted to ask questions. That's what he wanted to do, was to
Wait a minute.
ask questions.
On behalf of his constituents, they
Right.
sent him there to represent them. So, are you going to body slam half his state? I mean, his state? Help me.
Yeah. Well, that in essence is what they did. They didn't just body slam the U.S. senator. They body slammed his constituents. That's what they will feel, is that they too had their face thrown down into the ground for wanting to ask legitimate questions about what was going on. And the question then is, how do you expect them to respond? This is the reason that they're trying to amp up everything. When you're dealing with one of these folks that wants to be the type of dictator, they need the chaos in the street to underscore, to give validity to them trying to strong arm the state, to strong arm the city, to strong arm the people, to strong arm the elected officials. That's what we're seeing. And it's not just in California. Remember, we saw the strong arming going on as well in New Jersey with Ross Baraka, as well as
With
Congresswoman
Mayor,
McIver, I think is the name.
she's been indicted. Help me to help.
She's
Will
been
you help me with
indicted.
that?
Yeah. I mean,
What does that mean that when you indict a sitting U.S. Congresswoman who was inquiring on behalf of her constituents? Please explain. She was indicted for what?
yeah, her indictment, in essence, she was going to one of the detention centers, one of the Immigration Customs Enforcement, the ICE detention center, to see the conditions of what was going on there, the people that were being held there, which is what she's sort of supposed to do as a federal representative, going to looking in on the federal federally held people that are there. But while she's there, they're telling her to stand down. They're telling her not to interfere. And although she's not interfering in anything, she's just trying to get in there to find out what's going on. And because she and Mayor Ross Baraka were there doing the same thing, and they began to mess around with the mayor, she then stepped up and starts, speaking up for the mayor. Why are you holding him? Why are you doing this? And they say that she pushed one of the officers that were there. As a result of all of that, the Department of Justice then sought out and got an indictment against the congresswoman because of the push and the incident that was going on there, whether it was interference with their duty, all the other things that they can contrive up with regards to any charges being brought. But the essence of all of this is that what they were trying to do is they're trying to put that firm hand on the constituents, that firm hand on the citizens of the United States, that firm hand to slow them down, to stop them, to suppress them from trying to respond to the steps that the administration has now taken to try to strong arm everybody. They're trying to strong arm LA, they tried to strong arm Newark, New Jersey, and they're trying to do it now through the use of the military, through the use of the courts. Everything they can weaponize to try to hold people down is what they're trying to do, Santita.
I'm just trying to find out how you see this playing out, because you don't think people will, even if they're not happy, things can kind of hum along when you can pay your rent, when you can pay your mortgage, when you can buy your food, when you can go to a movie, when you can have a little bit of fun, when you can live. Increasingly, Americans cannot do that, Daryl.
Right.
And even now, the Republican Party, on a populist platform, they are winning over the American public. You hear in all communities, everybody, and it's true. They all say, give Trump time because he's working on it, because they want to believe, they need to believe that he is really fighting for them. That's not happening, everybody. But the oligarchs and the corporatists have taken over America, not just one party, but all of them. I mean, that's the Democrats' problem, because the disappointment with the Democrats is more profound because you're not governing the way as you purport to be. You said you're for the people, but you're not governing that way. You're not doing that. So I need you to help me to understand, Attorney Daryl Jones, what all of this means. Because we're watching as these, because we saw really hundreds of thousands at a time in cities all over the country individually, people marching for Palestinian justice. That's a real thing in America, a real thing with Republicans and Democrats. It's an American issue. Affordability is an issue. America is in crisis, and most Americans feel that way because most Americans feel deprived. So help me understand where this is all going, because now, even if it's in a little small part of Los Angeles, the National Guard have been federalized, and they've also brought in the Marines. These people fight they're not peacekeepers. They're soldiers. And soldiers wage war, soldiers kill. I'm not saying that that's all that they do, but that is the mission. That's the point of war. That's the awfulness of it. So, so where do you see this going? Because if Congresswoman McIver can be indicted, if you can arrest the mayor who is at a facility in his city, he can't ask questions. What is this? Where is this going? That's what I'm saying. When we see, and we're all watching this. That's why I said this has got to be about more than
And
immigration. The energy just feels different to me.
yeah, no, I agree with you wholeheartedly. Both Congresswoman McIver as well as Mayor Baraka were both doing what they were elected to do. They were elected to protect their constituents. That's what they were elected to do, and that's what they were doing. So, and it's in the face of them carrying out their elected duties that this occurs. So, with regards to where we see this going, we have said over and over again prior to the election that democracy was on the ballot, that your freedoms were on the ballot. Now I believe that we're really beginning to see that come true. And you're beginning to see the freedoms being tested. Is there freedom of expression? I think that if you were to ask Mahmoud Khalil that question, he certainly would say there's a question with regards to your freedom of expression. If you ask many of the foreign students that were here, that were doing peaceful protests, that were expressing themselves and ended up having their visas revoked, that's a First Amendment issue. Those freedoms are the ones that we were talking about, that where everyone's concerned about. So this is what I think, this is all headed to, Santita. That's the reason why, the Transformative Justice Coalition, along with Indivisible and all of our partners, that's the reason that we're having this No King's Day this Saturday. That's the reason why, Rainbow Push is going to be with us leading this march in Chicago this Saturday on the 14th for No King's Day, to stand up and push back, to say that we're not willing to give up all of our liberties. We're not willing to give up all of our freedom. We're not willing to give up all of our rights. That's where we're headed. And the question right now that the American people have got to ask themselves are you willing to give that up? Because that's where they're coming from right now. They want you to give it up, and they're hoping that you'll give it up without a fight. You'll give it up without pushing back. You'll give it up, and you will not be with the people that were out there in Los Angeles in the streets saying, I ain't going to have it. I'm not going to let it happen. They're willing to bet that you're going to stay home and just let it happen rather than stand up and push back. And that's where we are right now, is whether or not we will stand up and push back. The 14th of June will be not the last, right? But will be one of the steps we take in showing that we will stand up and push back. We'll be back on July the 17th for John Lewis National Day of Action. Well, we'll, again, all across the country, be standing up and pushing back, demanding that all of our freedoms be protected, and pushing it back against the attack that's on us right now, Santita.
Daryl Jones, everybody, WOLDC, WOL in DC. That radio show comes on 12 noon Eastern Standard Time every Tuesday. You don't want to miss it. Solomon Harris said Congresswoman McIver should have been indicted because she was aggressive against the agents. Solomon, do you really believe that? Come on. I didn't see that. She's supposed to be bold. She was not disrespectful, but she was assertive. Is that a problem? I don't know. I don't think so, but perhaps you do. And if you do, if you have a problem with that, I want you to elaborate. Okay, Solomon? T.O. Hardiman, as we're watching these marches break out, and wait a minute, I'm watching on television now, Karen Bass, the mayor of Los Angeles, is responding to the manhandling of Senator Padilla. He was handcuffed, forcibly handcuffed, body slammed everybody. This is unbelievable. T.O. Hardiman. When I look at these protests, I'm wondering if it's just about immigration. It feels like a lot of people are frustrated and angry about a lot of things. And this is like the spark. Well, what do you see?
Well, what I see, Santita, and it's good to see Brother Daryl here with you as always. What I'm seeing, sorry about that, is I believe it's really about immigration myself, because
Okay.
the people I'm talking to here in Chicago, that's the reason they're out there. It's about trying to support the immigrants that are here already and fighting back against the Trump administration. That's what I see clearly. The message there. But don't get me wrong, people are frustrated about a multitude of issues, but this one appears to be in that lens of immigration. And a lot of people do not like the way that Trump is handling United States citizens right now also. I mean, like you say, the manhandling of everybody. But see, ICE has been given an order. The Marines has been given an order, the National Guard, and they're going to uphold the Constitution to the best of their ability. And remember, let's pause right there. Like I say, the best of their ability. So if you resist, they're going to manhandle you in some level or another. But I believe that these protests have the ability to make and shape new policies here in the United States of America. Some what you call it, elected officials, politicians will begin to craft new policies based on what's happening right now, because there's no real solution in sight. Trump, he ran on the fact that he was going to deport all the people that came over here, like illegally. He ran on that campaign promise, and he's trying to keep his word. That doesn't, like I told you the other day, Santita, I think it's 50% with Trump right, 50% wrong, because you have to treat people in a humane way. And then I did some research, Santita. Malcolm X even made a comment many, many years ago that he was saying that the fight of the Latino brothers is similar to the fight of because they've been oppressed as well, just like African American people. So I'm beginning to look at it from a different lens now, because in reality, I thought initially it's not really a black man's fight or, the black community fight. But at the same time, when you oppress somebody anywhere, it's like oppressing people everywhere. Even, Bishop Desmond Tutu made some type of statement like that as well. And Dr. King talked about, we cannot go silent on issues. When it affects one people, it affects us all eventually. So that's where I'm at with all of this right now. But this, what's going on right now has the ability to make or break the country to some degree. Okay, the backlash, because we haven't seen nothing yet. Once the organizers began to really, really, build up the numbers to the point where you're going to have hundreds of thousands of people out here across the United States protesting, hopefully in a decent, peaceful way. But this thing could actually take a turn for the worse. And then you're going to see some stuff like what happened in China when they end up, hopefully it never happened. Remember in China, they had some protests many, many years ago. Then they're crushing some people there. Hopefully it won't go to that level. That happened. If people look at history, I forgot what the protests were all about, but China didn't play with that stuff. Yeah, you know it. Yeah. And see, Trump doesn't have an issue pretty much enforcing whatever he wants to enforce. Now, he was wrong for calling the Marines in. He was wrong for that decision. The National Guard should have been able to deal with this, or the, ICE agents, National Guard, but not, you don't need the Marines for something like this. Not in my opinion, all right? So I talked to the people on the front line out there. Like the other day, I was downtown just on the sidelines talking to people. And that's why I said it appears to be all about supporting the immigrants. Okay. So that's my take on it, Santita, because there's a whole lot of stuff going on. And, you know me, I'm concerned about black issues and a lot of the issues we got, still going on in Chicago. A 4-year-old kid fell out a second-story window on the west side, and they went into the house, and they found out that his brothers and sisters, all of them were living alone in the house. They were ages 11, 12, 4, and 8. And I'm saying this is an issue in our own backyard. A little kid, 15, was killed over a pair of gym shoes. So I'm kind of like preoccupied with some of the, the multiple issues that I'm dealing with here on the front line. Okay.
Well, I'm on the front line, and I look at, what I'm saying is what about me-ism. That's not what I'm saying. I read the Daily Mail, and the Daily Mail is a right-wing British newspaper. But what I love about it is that they have stories from everywhere. And once part of the way that I research, I read everything from the right, left, outside of that, and in between. And I say, why did they say that? And they might have a hyperlink to an article. And then I can go, oh, okay. So that's what this is. Ha ha. They point me to stories where I can do my own research. And you see people are troubled everywhere, Tio.
Yeah.
And it's the same. Dr. King talked about spiritual death. He didn't talk about the death of Black people, and he fought with all of his might to save our people.
Hmm.
But there is, I'm, the thing is, everything is going on at the same time. Everything, right? And so I'm wondering if, maybe in a segment of Chicago, it's about immigration rights. But as I'm listening to people, like they open up the phone lines on some shows, and they just let people say what they want to say. They're free. And the common thread for me is watching people who feel betrayed.
Mm.
They feel like the American dream. What? What?
Right.
I mean, because this has not been my dream, it's been my nightmare. I mean, please don't talk to black people about this. We were enslaved. Enslaved. It is not as simple as being owned by a human being. They controlled everything that you did. Everything.
Hmm. That's right.
So I'm thinking, Tio, that I think that this is about so much, because even the immigrant question strikes different people different ways within that community.
Yeah.
You
You
know,
know, I had some Venezuelans tell me on the south side of Chicago, they were actually provided with resources to come over here. And I talked about a lot of, so you had some background type of systems in play that financed a lot of the people to come over here. And it became more of a political football. I'm not saying they were absolutely correct in what they said, but I had somebody to translate for me. And some of the brothers from the streets connected with some of the Venezuelan brothers from the streets, and they shared that they were paid to come over here. I'm talking about
mhm,
back at the height when everybody was coming,
mhm.
when they had them big caravans walking through different countries.
But
They were
paid by
provided with
but
paid
paid
by
by whom?
some political like operatives. Yeah, they were paid by some political. They're
But
not going to tell you who they got paid, and I
no, no,
believe them because they.
I'm not saying, because I believe them too, but
Yeah,
not political operatives. They're typically corporate operatives.
well, whoever it might be,
No,
corporate,
no, 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 no,
political.
no, 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 no.
Yeah,
You and I have gone back and forth about this. It does
yeah,
matter who pays them, because who pays them determines why they've been paid.
Mm.
And they're not just being brought. They're not being brought here to vote. They're being brought here
right.
to go to work, because these corporations, America has become an economic superpower
I got it.
on stolen land, on land they didn't have to pay for, and for using
Right.
labor that they didn't have to pay for. So that's
Yeah.
why I'm saying, wait a minute, I understand getting paid. I don't doubt any of that. But it
Yep.
does matter where you get your money from. It's just like having an organization. Who funds you? He who supplies the gold makes the rules.
Yeah.
And I'm just saying, I want us to dig a little deeper, Tio.
Well, you and I did agree, Santita. This is more of a manufactured issue because of the corporations pay. If you look at the caravans, the people were dressed well. They had on brand new gym shoes. They had basically a new clothes. Everything was going real good for them. And the countries gave them free passes through the countries they had to walk through to get to the border of the United States. I'm not saying nothing's wrong with that. Don't get me wrong. But this is
Mhm.
a manufactured issue, and they're playing political football with it right now. The
Well,
Republicans, the Democrats, and all that kind of stuff. But the reality, the solution is right here. I just want to put the T.O. Hardeman solution out there. The people that are here already, allow them to stay and work on a new policy where they can stay, because all that deporting them, sending them back over there, that's going to be as complicated as it is today with all these protests. It's only going to become worse if we continue going down this pathway. And you can see right now, a lot of people are turning against Donald Trump because of this. And next thing you know, you're going to have millions of people turning against Donald Trump, and he's going to have to give into the pressure. I read an article today that he's going to make some changes on how they enforce what they're doing when they try to deport people. He's working on some policy changes on the way they're treating the people. So it's already making him kind of like fold just a little bit. Okay.
well,
All right, Santi?
no, no. I mean, look. I told you, my pushback
Yeah.
with you has been who's paying who's bringing them here.
Right.
See, the thing is, because if you don't look at American corporations trying to steal their oil, just as what we collapsed
Right.
Libya. That's what
I
we
got you.
do. We killed their leader. That's what we did. Destabilizing. We took out the strongest black leader in Africa because we wanted his gold
Yeah.
and we wanted his oil. That was it.
Correct.
In Venezuela, it's the same deal. It's just the reason, If you were in Italy, we'd be having this discussion because the Libyans are going there. Ironically, Gaddafi was half Italian because they were also colonized by Italians too, right? So the thing is, we're not seeing Libyans because they're not to the south, but they're on those flotillas leaving a collapsed state like our brothers and sisters to the south. They're leaving a state that we collapsed because
Yes.
we're trying to steal their stuff. And I'm saying, look, have your objections about people who came here without the proper paperwork. But if you don't understand how they got here, because trust and believe, if we wanted to shut them down and keep them out, we could do that. And that didn't start with Biden.
Mhm.
The first people who experienced this was us. We were brought here. and guess what? They've been colonizing Africa ever since.
Every
Because
time.
they want Africans, they want the resources. They want everything. The game is not new. And it's a false choice. We could feed everybody. We can actually feed the world. We do that. We've chosen not to do that. We build bombs. We don't bake bread. It's just as crazy. But Dr. LaShawn Latrice, I only have about 5 or 6 minutes left, but I'm glad I got you in between your husband, your children, your grandchildren, and this full of lights that you've got. What do you make of these marches? Coming up, we're going to be talking with Alex Lawson of Social Security Works, because he is part of the coalition that is leading the No Kings campaign. The No Kings campaign. Because this June 14th march, boy, it promises to be a doozy, everybody. President Trump has already said, if there's any pushback, you will be met with force.
Hmm.
Dr. LaShawn Latrice, are these marches that we're seeing in Chicago, in New York, in Los Angeles, is it about immigration only? Or is it about immigration and just a growing frustration that Americans have with a system that's not working for them?
Absolutely. The latter part of what you said. Um, People are very frustrated with what is happening with the immigrants. However, the administration itself has been pushing such pandemonium and chaos that it's making people feel unsafe. It's making people feel like they don't have a choice. They're experiencing all kind of anxiety, and people are just naturally traumatized at what the thoughts are that this administration and the president is able to do and being allowed to do, to be honest. A lot of things that were said at the beginning of his administration, many people just kind of flicked it off and said, oh, he can't do that and he can't do that. And I was saying, I beg to differ. You all better pay attention, because I believe he's in the business of pissing people off. And I say, no matter what it is, it's a control thing. Not only is he for control, but there are so many different things in play at the same time. It's impacting the masses of people, not just one group of people, but groups of people all over. So you can't see this issue and not see yourself connected some way, and that's why, as I was listening to you all talk, I'm glad that we have these dialogues so that we can engage and understand the entire perspective, not to necessarily change people's minds, but to let them understand there cannot be an issue with your brother that doesn't affect you.
Well, you know what, everybody, before we close this out, I want to know what your thoughts are. I mean, because where do you see all of this going? Because I'm wondering, I still wonder, Tio, if these protests are a spark that will please light a larger flame. Because when these Medicare cuts and Medicaid cuts are felt, it's going to get real. When
Yeah.
Social Security, trust me, and people are already asking questions. They're calling Social Security, and guess what? They're calling Social Security and no one's answering because staff has been cut. I mean, come on. So I think there's a whole lot that's going to happen here. Talk to me.
So,
And
no,
I'm going to do a round robin. I have about 3 minutes left.
okay.
And you got it.
No, I make it quick.
Daryl, and Dr. LaShawn. Yes.
Yeah, no, if Social Security is to be cut, and if some of them other cuts take place, Medicaid, Medicare, you're going to have, like Dr. Latrice say, pandemonium out here. You're going to have people really, it's just like the Great Depression days. I mean, it's going to spiral into like a recipe for disaster, because with the immigrants, with all these cuts, then that's all you need to spark a revolution. This can actually spark a revolution in the United States. Seriously, poor people's revolution that we'll never forget. That's the reason why the elected officials got to get a hold of what's going on out here and craft some new policy for these immigrants right now. So that's the only thing I have to say about that, Santita.
Okay. Dr. LaShawn Latrice, your thoughts?
I believe that the days of these politicians and people in these regulation entity, they're in these positions that they can make rules and policies. I think the day of them being silent is done. It's over. I think just like Tio said, if enough people become galvanized and everyone's impacted, when you're talking about cutting the ways that people preserve their health and their health being impacted by that, I think that's not just physical health, but that's mental health as well. And if we do not come together and unite and try to stand up and just basically take things back the way they need to be, it's going to go the opposite direction. And nobody's willing to go through that. We live in a day and age where people are willing to sacrifice their lives to make sure that the common good reigns. And so I believe that we're going to continue to have these conversations and grab more people's attention because they're going to see that these things are impacting them directly.
Attorney Darrell Jones, your final thought.
Santita, my final thought is that we're now at a point in time where generations that are yet unborn are going to look back at this moment and ask, what did you do? What did you do when democracy was under attack? What did you do? When you saw 14 million people potentially being cut off of their health care, what did you do? When you saw the problem with regards to people being able to eat and buy food and live and express themselves freely, what did you do? Santita, my closing remark is this: do something. Do something to stand up against the oligarchy. We encourage you to come out on the 14th. If you can't show up on the 14th, call 202-224-3121 and tell the members of Congress to stop this, to stand up for your rights to exist and for every freedom that makes America America, Santita. That's my closing remark.
Well, I want America to finally become America, and this, I swear, this America must be, it will be, but we're going to have to fight to make it happen, everybody. Every generation has their fight. Do not say that things have not changed, because they have changed. They've changed dramatically. But freedom is an ongoing struggle. When you say that things have not changed, you insult Frederick Douglass, you insult Gandhi, you insult Jesus, you insult so many folks who have done great work. You insult Dr. King, you insult Rosa Parks. You mean to tell me Rosa Parks didn't make a difference? Claudette Colvin didn't make a difference? The 4 little girls didn't make a difference? Yes, they did. They did. John F. Kennedy, he put some questions out there about the Federal Reserve, about war and peace, about the intelligence community. They made a difference. Now we have to pick up the baton, open up the files. Let's see who did what to whom. And the longer they hide it, the more you know who is culpable. Because the people who are hiding it are the folks who are guilty. And I think Americans are getting sick of that. Americans know that the rich are getting richer and the poor are getting poorer and the middle class is being obliterated. And that is not okay. That is horrible. And you ought to be tired of it. I dedicate the show in a special way to Ananda Lewis. Many of us in the 90s remember this beautiful ray of light who was at MTV, and I had the opportunity to participate in many seminars with her, and she was a beautiful young woman, fellow Howardite, sending her so much love, and she fought the fight, the good fight, battled breast cancer, and while breast cancer took her body, it did not take her spirit. She did say, you know what? I really thought my body was intelligent enough to fight this. I trusted it. I wish I had pursued the traditional means of fighting this battle. But I don't think Ananda was that wrong. I think you can do both. I think you can do both and. The body is intelligent. But we have to be very clear. A lot of what we're fighting today, these are some diseases and bugs that are just unnatural. And you have to be honest about that. So we pray for her husband, for her child who actually graduated from middle school on the day that his mother passed. And I pray that her love and her strength will overtake this young boy. And I hope that he and his father will cling to each other and know that God is lifting them up, especially now. And we just thank you, Ananda Lewis, for being this beautiful light and for sharing yourself with us. May she rest in peace and power. Big ups to you, Brian Wilson. Thank you for all of that great music, that surf music. I love it. I love it. And Sly Stone, let's dance to the music and let's celebrate some everyday people. I love you. I love you all. Just thank you. And make sure that as you live your life knowing that you can leave something behind that is going to leave the world richer. We're not all of us are going to be famous. Not all of us are going to have money, and money and fame don't necessarily work hand in hand. But everybody can make a difference. You can make a difference in someone's life. Do something so that you'll be missed. Think about that, everybody. May all of these beautiful people we talked about rest in peace and power. And hey, everybody, let's live and let's make a difference, not just in your own life, but in the lives of others. Let's talk about No Kings in the next hour of the Santita Jackson Show here on AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota.